The automatic doors of San Diego International Airport slid open with a soft whoosh as Maya stepped inside, her worn duffel bag slung over one shoulder. The fluorescent lights felt harsh against her tired eyes. She had barely slept in 3 days, not since the phone call that changed everything. "Your father had a heart attack," her mother's voice had cracked through the phone. "The doctors, they said it was massive. He didn't make it, honey." Now she was rushing to Boston for the funeral, her first-class ticket clutched in her sweaty palm. She had used nearly all her savings to buy it, but she needed to get there fast. Her dad would have understood. He always said life was too short to waste time in economy when it really mattered. Maya looked down at her clothes and almost laughed, but not from happiness. Ripped jeans, an old tank top, and sneakers that had seen better days. She hadn't packed. For travel, she had just grabbed whatever was clean and ran to the airport. Her appearance didn't exactly scream first-class passenger, but the ticket was real, and that's all that should matter. The check-in line moved slowly. Maya kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other, checking her phone every few seconds. The funeral was tomorrow afternoon. She couldn't miss it. She wouldn't miss it. When her turn came, the woman behind the counter looked surprised as Maya handed over her first-class boarding pass. "Is this yours?" the agent asked, holding the ticket like it might be fake. "Yes, I bought it yesterday," Maya replied, showing her ID and credit card. "My father passed away. I need to get to Boston." The agent's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss." She typed something into her computer, then printed out the boarding pass. "Gate 23A. Boarding starts in about an hour." Maya made her way through security, grateful that part was over. But as she walked toward her gate, she noticed people staring. A businessman in an expensive suit looked her up and down with obvious disapproval. An older woman clutched her purse tighter when Maya sat nearby. She tried to ignore them. People could think whatever they wanted. She had bigger things to worry about. When boarding finally began, Maya got in line with the other first-class passengers. She felt out of place among the well-dressed travelers with their designer luggage and polished shoes. But her ticket was just as valid as theirs. "First class, rows 1 through 4, announced the flight attendant at the gate. Maya showed her boarding pass and walked down the jet bridge. The plane was one of those big ones with 2 aisles and fancy seats in the front. She had never flown first class before, but her dad always said she deserved the best. This trip felt like the right time to finally treat herself, even under these terrible circumstances. As she stepped onto the plane, she was greeted by a flight attendant with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome aboard," the woman said, but her tone changed when she saw Maya's casual clothes. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Maya handed it over, noticing how the attendant's smile faded completely. "Are you sure this is your seat?" the attendant asked, studying the pass like she was looking for evidence of fraud. "Yes, 3A. That's what it says right there." Maya pointed to the clear printing on the pass. The attendant, whose name tag read Jennifer, looked Maya up and down slowly. Her eyes lingered on the ripped jeans and the old tank top. "This is first class," Jennifer said, as if Maya might not understand. "I know. That's why I bought a first-class ticket. It's just, we don't usually see—" Jennifer paused, clearly, trying to find a polite way to express her doubt. Maya felt her cheeks burn. "You don't usually see what?" "Well, people dressed so casually in first class." Other passengers were starting to board behind Maya, creating a line. She could feel their eyes on her back, could practically hear their thoughts. A man in an expensive watch cleared his throat impatiently. "Ma'am, could you please move along?" the man said. "Some of us actually belong in first class." Maya's jaw tightened. She had been through hell in the Navy, had earned every stripe and medal through blood, sweat, and determination. She had saved lives in combat zones, had faced down enemies that would make this entitled businessman wet himself. But here, in this narrow airplane aisle, she felt smaller than she had in years. Is there a problem here? Another flight attendant appeared, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Just checking tickets, Jennifer said, still holding Maya's boarding pass like it might disappear if she looked away. The older attendant glanced at the pass, then at Maya. 3A, first class. Everything looks correct to me. Jennifer's face reddened. Slightly, but she handed the pass back. Of course, right this way. Maya found her seat and settled in, trying to ignore the curious stares from other passengers. The seat was incredible, wide, comfortable, with more leg room than she knew what to do with. Under different circumstances, she might have enjoyed. As a few minutes later, Jennifer appeared again with a glass of water Maya hadn't asked for. Here you go, Jennifer said, but her voice was cold. I just want to make sure you're comfortable here. The way she said comfortable made it clear she hoped Maya wasn't. Thank you, Maya replied quietly. As more passengers boarded, Maya noticed how differently Jennifer treated them. Warm smiles, friendly chat, offers of drinks and snacks. But when she passed Maya's seat, her expression grew neutral, almost hostile. Maya pulled out her phone and looked at the last text from her dad, sent just 4 days ago. Hope you're doing good, kiddo. Can't wait to see you next month. Love you. She blinked back tears. Her father had been so proud when she joined the Navy, even prouder when she became a SEAL. He used to tell everyone about his daughter who served her country. Now he was gone, and she was stuck on a plane being treated like she didn't belong, like she hadn't earned her place through years of service and sacrifice. The businessman who had complained earlier was now settled in his seat across the aisle. He kept glancing at Maya with obvious distaste, shaking his head and muttering to his companion about how standards have really fallen and how anyone can buy a ticket these days. Maya shifted in her seat, and her tank top rode up slightly, revealing a small portion of the intricate tattoo that covered most of her back. It was her pride and joy, a detailed Navy SEAL trident surrounded by the names of her fallen brothers and sisters, inked by the best artist in San Diego. But to the people around her, it probably just looked like another reason to judge her. Jennifer returned, this time with a more serious expression. Excuse me, she said, leaning down close to Maya's ear. I need to ask you something privately. Maya's heart sank. She had a feeling this wasn't going to be good. Did you purchase this ticket yourself? Jennifer asked quietly. Of course I did. Why would you ask that? Well, it's just unusual. First class tickets are quite expensive and you seem... I seem what? Jennifer glanced around, making sure other passengers couldn't hear. You seem like maybe economy would be more appropriate for your situation. Maya felt like she'd been slapped. My situation? I'm just saying, if there was some kind of mistake, or if someone else bought this ticket for you, we can fix it before takeoff. No harm done. The implication was clear. Jennifer thought Maya had either stolen the ticket, lied about purchasing it, or somehow conned her way into first class. The idea that a young woman in casual clothes could legitimately afford a first-class ticket seemed impossible to her. I bought this ticket with my own money, Maya said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. I have the receipt, my credit card, my ID, everything you need to verify that I belong here. Jennifer's smile was thin and fake. Of course. I'm just doing my job, making sure all our passengers are comfortable. But Maya could see the doubt in her eyes, could feel the judgment radiating from her like heat, and as other passengers continued to board and settle in around her, she realized that this was going to be a very long flight indeed. The engines started up with a low rumble, and Maya closed her eyes, trying to find the calm she had learned. In the military, Soon they would be in the air, and this nightmare would be one step closer to being over. But deep down, she had a feeling the worst was yet to come. 30,000 feet above the Arizona desert, Flight 447 cruised smoothly through the evening sky. The cabin lights had been dimmed for the cross-country journey, and most passengers had settled in for the long flight to Boston. Some were reading, others watching movies on their screens, and a few were already trying to sleep. Captain Luis Rodriguez sat in the cockpit, monitoring the instruments with the practiced ease of someone who had been flying for over 20 years. His co-pilot was handling the routine communications with air traffic control, leaving Luis free to think about the day ahead. Tomorrow was his daughter's graduation from nursing school, and he couldn't be prouder. Luis had served in the Navy for 15 years before transitioning to commercial aviation. Flying had always been his passion, but serving his country had been his duty. He understood the unique challenges that military personnel faced, both during service and after returning to civilian life. "Captain," his co-pilot said, "everything's looking good. We're on schedule to arrive in Boston right on time." "Perfect," Luis replied. "I'm going to do my passenger walk-through. Keep an eye on things." It was Luis's habit to walk through the cabin during long flights. He liked to check on passengers, especially those who seemed nervous about flying. It was one of the things that set him apart from other pilots. He genuinely cared about the people in his care. He started in first class, where the atmosphere was calm and quiet. A few passengers nodded politely as he passed, and he could see that Jennifer and the other flight attendants were providing their usual attentive service. Everything seemed normal, exactly as it should be. Moving into the business class section, Luis chatted briefly with a nervous flyer who was gripping his armrest tightly. "First time flying?" Luis asked with a warm smile. "No, but I still get anxious during turbulence," the man admitted. "We're not expecting any tonight," Luis assured him. "Should be a smooth ride all the way to Boston." As he continued toward economy class, Luis noticed the mood shift. The seats were more cramped, the conversations quieter, and there was a subtle tension in the air that he couldn't quite place. He had walked through thousands of cabins over the years, and he had developed an instinct for reading the emotional climate of his passengers. Near the back of economy, he spotted Frank, the elderly veteran he had noticed during boarding. Frank was sitting with his wife, but he looked agitated, frequently glancing toward the front of the plane with obvious irritation. "Everything all right back here?" Luis asked, stopping by Frank's row. Frank looked up, recognizing the captain's uniform. "To be honest, Captain, no. I witnessed something earlier that's been bothering me." "What happened?" Frank's wife placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Frank, maybe you shouldn't—" "No, Helen," Frank interrupted. "Someone needs to know about this." He turned back to Luis. "Your crew removed a young woman from first class for no good reason. She had a valid ticket, wasn't causing any trouble, but they kicked her out anyway because some entitled businessmen complained about her appearance." Luis frowned. This was the first he'd heard of any incident. "Where is she now?" Frank nodded, toward a seat several rows ahead. "Back there, in the middle seat." Poor girl looked heartbroken. Luis followed Frank's gaze and spotted Maya. She was sitting quietly, staring out the window with a distant expression. Even from behind, he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like someone trying to disappear. "Thank you for telling me," Luis said to Frank. "I'll look into this." As Luis approached Maya's row, he could see more clearly what Frank had been talking about. The young woman was indeed dressed casually, but there was nothing inappropriate about her appearance. She looked tired, sad, and completely defeated. "Excuse me, miss," Luis said gently. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. Do you mind if I ask how your flight is going?" Maya looked up, surprised to see the pilot speaking to her. "Oh, it's fine, I guess." Louise could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the kind of weariness that went deeper than just being tired from travel. I heard there might have been some confusion earlier about your seat assignment. Maya's expression hardened slightly. There was no confusion. I was removed from first class because the flight attendant decided I didn't belong there. May I see your boarding pass? Maya handed it over, along with her ID and the credit card she had used to purchase the ticket. Luis examined everything, carefully, noting that her last name was Vasquez and that she was 28 years old. Everything looks legitimate to me, Luis said, handing the documents back. Mind if I ask what brings you to Boston? Maya's voice caught slightly. My father's funeral. He died 3 days ago. Luis felt a pang of sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. He was my hero, you know. Always told me to stand up for myself, to never let anyone make me feel small. Maya's voice grew bitter. I guess I failed him today. What do you mean? I let them push me around. I should have fought harder, but I was so tired, and I just wanted to get to Boston. I needed to be there for his funeral. Luis noticed something as Maya shifted in her seat. Her tank top had moved slightly, revealing the edge of what looked like a detailed tattoo on her shoulder blade. In his military experience, he had seen many tattoos, but this one caught his attention because of its distinctive style and placement. Ms. Vasquez, Luis said carefully. I hope you don't mind me asking, but did you serve in the military? Maya looked surprised by the question. Yes, sir. Navy. How did you know? I served too. Navy pilot for 15 years before I got into commercial aviation. There's something about military bearing that you never lose. For the first time since boarding, Maya's expression softened slightly. Thank you for your service, Captain. Thank you for yours. What was your rate? Hospital corpsman, but I cross-trained for special operations. Maya hesitated, then added quietly, I was with the SEALs. Luis's eyes widened. In all his years of military service, he had only met a handful of Navy SEALs, and never a female. 1. The selection process was notoriously difficult, with a failure rate over 90%. Anyone who made it through that training deserved immediate respect. A SEAL corpsman? Luis said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. That's incredibly impressive. How many tours did you serve? 3. 2 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. Maya's voice was steady, but Luis could hear the weight of those deployments in her words. Combat? Yes, sir. Forward operating bases mostly. Provided medical support for SEAL teams during direct action missions. Luis was quiet for a moment, processing this information. The young woman sitting in front of him had saved lives under enemy fire, had served in one of the most elite units in the American military, and had been treated like a second-class citizen on his aircraft. What happened to end your service? Luis asked gently. Maya touched her left shoulder unconsciously. IED explosion during my 3rd tour. Took some shrapnel in my shoulder and back. Doctors said I could stay in the Navy, but not with the teams. I decided to get out instead. And now? I'm a trauma nurse at San Diego General. Seemed like a natural transition, still helping people, still working under pressure. Luis felt a growing anger at how Maya had been treated. Here was a decorated veteran who had literally saved lives in combat, and she had been humiliated and removed from a seat she had rightfully purchased. Ms. Vasquez, Luis said, would you mind if I took a closer look at your tattoo? I promise I'm not being inappropriate. I think I recognize some military insignia. Maya hesitated, then carefully adjusted her tank top to reveal more of the intricate artwork covering her shoulder blade and upper back. Luis's breath caught as he saw the detailed Navy SEAL trident, surrounded by names and dates that he recognized as a memorial to fallen comrades. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, but more importantly, the symbolism was unmistakable. Only someone who had actually served with SEAL teams would have a tattoo like this. The specific details, the placement, The way the names were arranged, it all spoke to authentic military experience. "That's beautiful work," Luis said respectfully. "And those names—" "My brothers and sisters who didn't make it home," Maya said quietly. "I carry them with me always." Luis recognized several of the names from news reports he had read over the years. These were real SEALs who had died in combat, heroes whose sacrifice had been documented in military records. "Ms. Vasquez," Luis said, his voice firm with resolve, "what happened to you today was completely unacceptable. You're a decorated veteran who served with honor, and you were treated shamefully on my aircraft." Maya looked up at him with surprise. "Captain, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do," Luis interrupted. "You put your life on the line for this country, and no one, not a flight attendant, not a passenger, not anyone, has the right to treat you with disrespect because of how you're dressed or how you look." For the first time since boarding, Maya felt a glimmer of hope. Here was someone who understood, someone who recognized her service and her worth. "Thank you, Captain," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." Luis stood up, his jaw set with determination. "This conversation isn't over, Ms. Vasquez. Stay right here." As he walked back toward the front of the plane, Luis's mind was racing. He had a choice to make. Captain Luis Rodriguez walked back toward the cockpit with purpose in every step. His mind was made up, but his hands were slightly shaking with controlled anger. In 20 years of flying, he had never been so furious about how a passenger had been treated. As he passed through first class, he noticed Jennifer arranging pillows for Richard, the businessman who had complained about Maya. Richard was reclining comfortably in the spacious seat that should never have been taken from Maya in the first place. The sight made Luis's jaw clench even tighter. "Captain?" Jennifer called out as he passed. "Is everything all right? You look upset." Luis stopped and turned to face her, his expression carefully controlled. "Actually, Jennifer, we need to talk. But first I have something to address with all the passengers." Jennifer looked confused. "Address what? Is there a problem with the flight?" "You could say that," Luis replied coldly. "Excuse me." He continued to the cockpit, where his co-pilot looked up with concern. "Everything okay, Captain? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Luis said, settling into his seat. "I've seen injustice, and I'm about to do something about it." He reached for the intercom microphone, then paused. Once he made this announcement, there would be no taking it back. The airline might not appreciate him calling attention to their staff's behavior, but some things were more important than corporate politics. Luis thought about his own military service, about the brothers and sisters in arms he had served with. He thought about the oath he had taken to protect and defend, and he realized that duty didn't end just because he had changed uniforms. He keyed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez speaking. I need everyone to remain seated and give me your attention for a very important announcement." Throughout the cabin, conversations stopped. Passengers looked up from their books and phones, sensing the unusual seriousness in the captain's voice. Maya, still sitting in her cramped middle seat, looked up in confusion. "I've been flying for over 20 years, Luis continued, his voice carrying clearly through the cabin speakers. "In that time, I've had the privilege of carrying millions of passengers safely to their destinations. But today, something happened on my aircraft that I cannot and will not let stand." Jennifer moved toward the intercom phone near the galley, looking alarmed. She had never heard a captain make this kind of announcement before. Earlier today, before takeoff, one of our passengers was removed from her rightfully purchased first-class seat, not because she was disruptive, not because she was dangerous, not because she had done anything wrong. She was removed because some people decided she didn't look like she belonged in first class. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Passengers began looking around, trying to figure out who the captain was talking about. Maya's cheeks burned as she realized every eye would soon be on her. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his first-class seat. He glanced around nervously, suddenly aware that his earlier complaints might have consequences. The passenger I'm referring to, Luis continued, his voice growing stronger, is a 28-year-old trauma nurse from San Diego. She purchased her first-class ticket with her own money because she needed to get to Boston quickly. Her father had just passed away and she was rushing to make it to his funeral. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't expected this, hadn't asked the captain to fight her battle, but hearing her story told with such respect and dignity was overwhelming. But here's what the people who judged her didn't know, Luis said, his voice now filled with unmistakable pride. This young woman is a decorated Navy veteran. She served 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq as a hospital corpsman with Navy SEAL teams. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Passengers throughout the cabin sat up straighter, their faces registering shock and amazement. Frank, the elderly veteran, smiled widely and began clapping softly. For those of you who don't understand what that means, Luis continued, let me explain. Navy SEALs are among the most elite warriors in the world. Less than 1% of people who attempt SEAL training actually complete it, and the corpsmen who serve with them, the medics, they're the ones who run toward danger to save lives when everyone else is running away. Jennifer's face had gone completely pale. She stood frozen in the galley, beginning to understand the magnitude of what had happened. This hero sitting in our cabin today, Luis's voice rang with emotion, saved American lives under enemy fire. She provided medical care in forward operating bases while rockets and mortars fell around her. She carried wounded warriors to safety when they couldn't carry themselves. Maya buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed by the captain's words. Around her, passengers were turning to look, their expressions transformed from curiosity to awe and shame. She has a tattoo on her back, Luis continued, a memorial to her fallen brothers and sisters, names of Navy SEALs who gave their lives for this country. She carries their memory with her every single day. The cabin was completely silent, except for the steady hum of the engines. Even Richard had stopped fidgeting, his face flushed with embarrassment. After her 3rd tour, she was wounded by an IED explosion. She could have stayed in the Navy, but she chose to leave and become a trauma nurse instead. She's still saving lives, still serving others, just in a different uniform. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The businessman next to her was staring at her with a mixture of amazement and respect. So when I learned that this American hero was removed from a seat she purchased legally, humiliated in front of a plane full of strangers, and treated like a second-class citizen on my aircraft, Luis's voice grew firm. I decided that everyone needed to know exactly who they were looking at. The applause started slowly. Frank was the first, clapping steadily from his seat in economy. Then his wife joined in. Within seconds, the applause spread throughout the cabin like a wave. Passengers stood up to get a better look at Maya, many of them with tears in their eyes. The applause grew louder, more enthusiastic, until the entire cabin was thundering with appreciation. Maya looked around in amazement as hundreds of people stood to honor her service. A flight attendant from coach was crying openly. A businessman in row 12 was saluting. A young mother was lifting her toddler so he could see the hero lady. Even in first class, passengers were standing and clapping, many of them shooting disapproving glances at Richard, who was slumped down in his seat trying to become invisible. Ms. Vasquez, Luis's voice came over the intercom again. Would you please stand up so everyone can properly thank you for your service? Maya hesitated, then slowly stood. The applause became deafening. People were cheering, whistling, and some were openly weeping. She had never experienced anything like this, even during military ceremonies. Thank you, she managed to say, though her voice was barely audible over the noise. Luis wasn't finished. Now, I want everyone to understand something. What happened to Ms. Vasquez today was wrong. It was discrimination, pure and simple. It was un-American, and it stops here on my aircraft right now. The applause gradually died down as passengers sensed the captain had more to say. "Ms. Vasquez," Luis continued, "I am personally escorting you back to the first-class seat you rightfully purchased. And I want to make it clear to every passenger and crew member on this aircraft that you are to be treated with the respect and dignity that any American hero deserves." Maya felt overwhelmed by the gesture. She had gone from feeling like an outcast to being celebrated as a hero in the span of minutes. Furthermore, Luis added, his voice taking on a harder edge, any passenger or crew member who has a problem with that arrangement can discuss it with me personally after we land. And trust me, you don't want to have that conversation. The message was crystal clear. Richard sank even lower in his seat, realizing that his comfortable flight had just become very uncomfortable indeed. As the captain's announcement ended, the cabin erupted in applause again. But this time, it wasn't just appreciation for Maya's service. It was approval for the captain's stand, for his willingness to right a wrong and defend someone who couldn't defend herself. Maya gathered her small bag, her hands trembling with emotion. As she began walking toward first class, passengers reached out to shake her hand, to thank her, to apologize for what had happened. The aisle became a receiving line of gratitude and respect. Jennifer watched her approach with terror in her eyes, finally understanding that she had made the biggest mistake of her career. But for Maya, walking back to her rightful seat felt like more than just reclaiming what she had purchased. It felt like coming home. The plane continued to fill up as more passengers found their seats. Maya tried to focus on the safety demonstration, but she could feel Jennifer's eyes on her every few minutes. It was like being watched by a hawk waiting for its prey to make a wrong move. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through old photos of her dad. There was one from last Christmas where he was wearing the navy sweatshirt she had given him, grinning from ear to ear. He had been so proud to wear it, telling everyone at the grocery store that his daughter was a Navy SEAL. The memory made her chest tighten with grief. "Excuse me?" Maya looked up to find Jennifer standing in the aisle again, holding a small bottle of water and some peanuts. "Complimentary snacks for first class," Jennifer said, but her tone was anything but welcoming. She practically dropped the items on Maya's tray table instead of placing them gently like she did for other passengers. "Thank you," Maya said, trying to keep her voice polite. Jennifer didn't move away. Instead, she stood there for a moment, looking around the first-class cabin like she was counting passengers. "You know," Jennifer said, lowering her voice, "we have some very nice seats available in economy. Sometimes people find first class a bit overwhelming on their first time." Maya blinked. "This isn't my first time flying." "Oh, I just meant first time in first class. The service can be quite different from what some people are used to." The way Jennifer said "some people" made Maya's skin crawl. She had heard that tone before, during her early days in the military when some people doubted whether she belonged there too. But she had proven herself then, earned her place through sweat and determination. She shouldn't have to prove herself again just to sit in a seat she had paid for. "I think I'll be fine," Maya said firmly. Jennifer's smile was razor thin. "Of course, but if you change your mind, just let me know. We want all our passengers to feel comfortable in their appropriate seats." There was that word again, appropriate, as if Maya sitting in first class was somehow inappropriate, somehow wrong. After Jennifer finally moved on, Maya tried to relax. She opened the small bag of peanuts and took a sip of water, looking out the window at the ground crew preparing for takeoff. Soon, they would be in the air, and she could try to get some sleep before facing the hardest day of her life. But her peace didn't last long. "I can't believe this," a loud voice said from across the aisle. Maya glanced over to see the businessman from earlier talking to his companion, a well-dressed woman with expensive jewelry. He was making no effort to keep his voice down. "What's wrong, Richard?" the woman asked. "Look around," Richard said, gesturing broadly. This is supposed to be first class. I pay premium prices for premium service, and they're letting anyone in here now. Maya's cheeks burned. She tried to focus on her phone, but Richard's voice seemed to get louder. I mean, look at her, he continued, clearly referring to Maya. Torn jeans, tank top, probably never seen the inside of first class before today. This airline has really gone downhill. The woman glanced at Maya, then back at Richard. Maybe she's someone's daughter? You know how these celebrities and athletes spoil their kids. More likely she's flying on someone else's dime, Richard said with a snort. Probably some kind of charity case or diversity program. Airlines are always trying to look good in the news these days. Maya's hands clenched into fists. She had faced enemy fire in Afghanistan, had pulled wounded soldiers to safety under the worst conditions imaginable. But sitting here, listening to strangers discuss her like she wasn't even human, was somehow worse than any battle she had fought. She took a deep breath, trying to channel the discipline that had gotten her through SEAL training. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Just get through the flight. But Richard wasn't done. I'm going to complain to the airline, he announced. This is unacceptable. When I pay first-class prices, I expect a first-class experience. That includes not having to sit next to people who clearly don't belong here. That was the last straw. Maya turned to face him directly. Excuse me, she said, her voice calm but firm. I can hear everything you're saying. Richard looked momentarily, surprised, as if he hadn't expected her to speak up. Then his expression hardened. Well, maybe you should consider moving to a section more suited to your circumstances, he said. Some of us actually pay full price for these seats. So did I, Maya replied. I have my receipt if you'd like to see it. Richard laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Right, and I'm sure it's completely legitimate. The woman next to him looked uncomfortable now, tugging at his sleeve. Richard, maybe we should just... No, he interrupted. I'm tired of this. I work hard for my money, and I shouldn't have to deal with this when I'm trying to relax on a flight. Other passengers were starting to notice the commotion. Maya could see heads turning, people whispering to each other. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like she was on display for everyone to judge. Jennifer appeared as if summoned by the conflict, her expression immediately concerned. But not for Maya. Is everything all right here, Mr. Thompson? She asked Richard with genuine warmth. Actually, no, Richard said. I'm concerned about the clientele. You're allowing in first class these days. It's affecting the atmosphere. Jennifer's eyes flicked to Maya, then back to Richard. I understand your concerns completely. Let me see what I can do. Maya watched in disbelief as Jennifer seemed to take Richard's side without even asking what happened. The flight attendant approached Maya with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ma'am, I wonder if I might have a word with you, Jennifer said quietly. About what? Well, it seems there might be some confusion about your seat assignment. Sometimes our computer system makes mistakes, especially with last-minute bookings. Maya's heart started to race. There's no mistake. I showed you my boarding pass. You verified it yourself. Yes, but sometimes there are complications that don't show up right away. If you could just come with me to the galley, we can sort this out quickly and quietly. The implication was clear. Jennifer wanted to move her out of first class, away from Richard and his complaints. Maya looked around the cabin and saw other passengers watching the scene unfold. Some looked sympathetic, but most seemed to agree with Richard's assessment. I'm not moving, Maya said firmly. I paid for this seat, and I have every right to be here. Jennifer's mask of politeness began to slip. Ma'am, I'm trying to handle this discreetly, but if you're going to be difficult, I may need to call for assistance. Assistance for what? Sitting in a seat I purchased? For disturbing other passengers, Jennifer said, her voice getting sharper. Maya looked around again. She wasn't the one who had been talking loudly and making comments. She wasn't the one who had started the confrontation, but somehow, she was the one being blamed for it. "I haven't disturbed anyone," Maya said. "I've been sitting here quietly since I boarded." "That's not how Mr. Thompson sees it," Jennifer replied. "And he's one of our platinum frequent flyers. We take his concerns very seriously." The message was clear. Richard's comfort was more important than Maya's rights. His status as a frequent flyer gave him power that Maya didn't have, and Jennifer was willing to use that power against her. "This is discrimination," Maya said, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "This is customer service," Jennifer shot back. "Now, are you going to cooperate, or do I need to call security?" Maya felt the walls closing in around her. She thought about her father, about how he had always taught her to stand up for herself, but to pick her battles wisely. She thought about the funeral tomorrow, about how she needed to get to Boston no matter what. But she also thought about all the times she had been the only woman in a room full of men who didn't think she belonged. All the times she had been told she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, tough enough. All the times she had proven them wrong. "Call security if you want," Maya said finally. "But I'm not moving from a seat I rightfully purchased." Jennifer's eyes flashed with anger. "Fine. Have it your way." She turned and walked toward the front of the plane, pulling out her phone. Maya watched her go, knowing that she had just made a decision that could change everything. But she was tired of being pushed around, tired of being treated like she didn't matter. The plane was nearly full now, and the captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing that they would be departing soon. Maya closed her eyes and tried to prepare herself for whatever was coming next. She had fought bigger battles than this. She would get through it, just like she always did. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this fight was far from over. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the armrests of her seat. She could see Jennifer at the front of the plane, speaking urgently into her phone. Other passengers were openly staring now, some craning their necks to get a better view of the drama unfolding in first class. A few rows behind her, an elderly man with a military bearing watched the scene with growing concern. His weathered hands bore the scars of old battles, and his sharp eyes had seen enough injustice to recognize it when it was happening right in front of him. "This ain't right," the old veteran muttered to his wife beside him. "That girl's done. Nothing wrong." His wife squeezed his arm gently. "Maybe we should stay out of it, Frank." But Frank couldn't stay quiet. He had served in Vietnam when discrimination was even worse, had seen good soldiers judged by everything except their character. Something about the young woman in first class reminded him of the brave medics he had served with. Strong, dignified, but clearly carrying invisible wounds. Meanwhile, Maya tried to calm her racing heart. She pulled out her phone and called. Her mother. "Mom, it's me," she whispered when her mother answered. "Honey, are you on the plane? How are you holding up?" Maya felt tears threatening. It's been hard. These people on the plane, they're treating me like I don't belong here. Like I'm some kind of criminal." "What do you mean?" Before Maya could explain, she saw two airport security officers boarding the plane. Jennifer was leading them straight toward her seat, pointing and speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "Mom, I have to go," Maya said quickly. "I'll call you when I land." She hung up just as the security officers reached her row. The first officer was a middle-aged black man with kind eyes who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The second was younger, white, with an expression that suggested he'd already made up his mind about the situation. "Ma'am," the older officer said gently, "I'm Officer Johnson, and this is Officer Davis. We understand there's been some confusion about your seat assignment." Maya looked up at them, her heart pounding. "There's no confusion. I bought this ticket. I have my boarding pass. My ID, my credit card receipt, everything is legitimate." Officer Johnson nodded. "I'm sure it is." But the flight crew has asked us to sort this out before takeoff. Can you show me your documentation again? Maya handed over everything. Her boarding pass, driver's license, credit card, and even her phone, showing the email confirmation of her purchase. Officer Johnson examined each item carefully, while Officer Davis stood impatiently behind him. "Everything looks in order to me," Johnson said, handing the documents back. Jennifer stepped forward, her face flushed with frustration. "But she's clearly not first-class material. Look at how she's dressed. She's making other passengers uncomfortable." "Being uncomfortable isn't a crime," Johnson replied firmly, "and neither is wearing casual clothes." Officer Davis stepped forward. "Maybe not, but if she's disrupting the flight, we need to handle it." "I haven't disrupted anything," Maya said, her voice stronger now. "I've been sitting here quietly. The only disruption came from that man over there making loud comments about me." She pointed to Richard, who was watching the scene with obvious satisfaction. He had gotten exactly what he wanted: security removing the person he deemed unworthy of sharing his space. Officer Davis looked at Richard, then back at Maya. "Well, somebody's causing problems, and the crew says it's you." "Because they're lying," Maya said, her military training keeping her voice level despite her anger. "They decided I don't belong here the moment I walked on this plane, and now they're trying to justify it." Jennifer crossed her arms. "I've been doing this job for 12 years. I know trouble when I see it." "What you see," Maya replied, "is a young woman who doesn't look like your usual first-class passenger. But I earned the money to buy this ticket, just like everyone else here." The cabin had gone completely silent. Even the flight attendants, preparing for takeoff, had stopped their work to watch the confrontation. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her, judging her every word and movement. Frank, the elderly veteran, finally stood up from his economy seat. "Excuse me, officers." All heads turned toward him as he made his way forward, his wife following reluctantly, behind. "I've been watching this whole thing," Frank said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded troops in combat. "That young lady hasn't done anything wrong. She's been sitting there quietly while others have been making a scene." Jennifer shot him an annoyed look. "Sir, please return to your seat. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me when I see someone being treated unfairly," Frank replied. "I've been flying for 50 years and I've never seen anything like this." Officer Davis was getting impatient. "Sir, we appreciate your input, but we need to resolve this situation so the flight can depart." "The resolution is simple," Frank said. "Let the girl sit in the seat she paid for." Richard finally spoke up from his seat. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to sit next to her." Frank turned to face Richard with a look that could melt steel. "Son, I've sat next to all kinds of people in my life, good ones and bad ones, and I can tell you right now, you're not measuring up to half the character that young woman has shown today." Richard's face turned red, but he didn't respond. Officer Johnson looked around the cabin, clearly trying to find a solution that would satisfy everyone. "Ma'am," he said to Maya, "would you be willing to accept a seat upgrade to business class? The airline could compensate you for any inconvenience." "I don't want an upgrade," Maya said firmly. "I want the seat I paid for, the seat I'm already sitting in." Jennifer stepped closer to the officers. "She's being unreasonable. We have other passengers to consider." "The only unreasonable thing here," Officer Johnson said slowly, "is asking someone to move from a seat they legitimately purchased because other passengers don't like how they look." Officer Davis shifted uncomfortably. "But the crew has the authority to remove disruptive passengers." "Show me the disruption," Johnson challenged. "Point to one thing this woman has done wrong." Jennifer scrambled for an answer. She questioned my authority. She refused to cooperate when I tried to resolve the situation quietly. "Asking to remain in a seat you paid for isn't questioning authority," Johnson replied. "It's exercising your rights." But Officer Davis had made up his mind. "Look, We can stand here and debate this all day, but the fact is the crew wants her moved. End of story. Maya felt her last hope slipping away. She thought about her father, about how he had always told her to stand up for herself. But she also thought about missing his funeral if this escalated further. "Fine," she said quietly, gathering her things. "I'll move." Frank started to protest, but Maya shook her head. "It's okay. I just need to get to Boston." As she stood up, her tank top shifted slightly, revealing more of the intricate tattoo on her back. Frank's eyes widened as he caught a glimpse of what looked like military insignia, but Maya was moving too quickly for him to see clearly. Officer Johnson helped her gather her small bag, his expression apologetic. "I'm sorry about this," he whispered. "This isn't right." Jennifer led them toward the economy section, her satisfaction barely concealed. Other passengers watched as Maya was escorted past them, some looking sympathetic, others appearing vindicated in their initial judgments. As they reached the economy section, Jennifer pointed to a middle seat near the back of the plane. "This will work." Maya looked at the cramped seat between two large passengers, then at the spacious first-class seat she had just vacated. The contrast was stark and humiliating. "The airline will be hearing from me about this," Frank called out as Maya settled into her new seat. Jennifer ignored him, already heading back to first class to resume her normal duties. As Maya buckled her seatbelt, she felt smaller than she had in years. All the confidence she had built during her military service, all the pride she had earned through her accomplishments, seemed to evaporate in the face of this casual cruelty. The man next to her glanced over with curiosity, noticing her obvious distress. "Rough day?" he asked kindly. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. She pulled out her phone and stared at the photo of her father, wondering what he would think of how she had handled the situation. Would he be proud that she had stood up for herself initially, or disappointed that she had eventually given in as the plane finally pushed back from the gate? Maya closed her eyes and tried to block out the memory of the last hour. But the humiliation burned in her chest like a physical pain, mixing with her grief in a way that made everything feel worse. She had survived combat, had saved lives under enemy fire, had earned respect in one of the most elite military units in the world. But on this plane, none of that mattered. Here, she was just another person who didn't look like she belonged in first class. The engines roared to life, and Maya gripped her armrests as the plane began its takeoff roll. Soon they would be airborne, carrying her toward her father's funeral, and away from this nightmare. But she knew the memory of this day would stay with her long after she landed. The walk from economy to first class felt like a victory march. Maya moved slowly through the aisle, her small duffel bag in hand, as passengers continued to reach out with words of gratitude and respect. An elderly woman grabbed her hand and whispered, "Thank you for your service, dear. My grandson is in the Marines." A middle-aged man stood up to shake her hand, saying, "My brother served in Iraq. I know what you've been through." Each interaction helped heal the wounds from earlier in the flight. Maya had gone from feeling invisible and unwanted to being surrounded by support and appreciation. It was overwhelming in the best possible ways. She approached first class. Maya could see Captain Rodriguez waiting for her at the entrance to the cabin. He was holding her original boarding pass and had a warm smile on his weathered face. "Ms. Vasquez," he said formally, "allow me to, personally, escort you to your seat." Jennifer stood nearby, her face pale and her hands shaking. She had realized the full magnitude of her mistake and the career-ending implications of her actions. When the captain had announced Maya's military background, Jennifer had felt her stomach drop to her shoes. "Ma'am," Jennifer said quietly as Maya approached. I need to apologize. I made a terrible mistake today." Maya looked at her for a long moment. She could see the genuine remorse in Jennifer's eyes, the fear about her future, the shame about her actions. In the military, Maya had learned that people could change, that mistakes could be learning opportunities if handled correctly. Apology. Accepted, Maya said simply. But I hope you'll remember this day the next time you judge someone based on their appearance. Jennifer nodded vigorously, tears forming in her eyes. I will. I promise I will. Captain Rodriguez placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. Your seat, ma'am. Maya settled into 3A, the first-class seat she had originally purchased. It felt different now, not just comfortable, but rightful. She belonged here not just because she had paid for it, but because she had earned the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Can I get you anything? Jennifer asked, her voice humble and eager to make amends. A drink? Some food? Anything at all? Just some water would be nice, Maya replied. Thank you. As Jennifer hurried away, Captain Rodriguez sat down in the empty seat next to Maya. How are you feeling? He asked gently. Maya took a deep breath. Overwhelmed, grateful, still processing everything that just happened. What you experienced earlier, the captain said, that's not who we are as Americans. That's not who we are as human beings. I'm sorry it happened on my watch. You didn't cause it, Maya replied. But thank you for fixing it. Richard, the businessman who had started this whole mess, was slumped in his seat across the aisle. He kept glancing over at Maya with obvious shame, clearly wanting to say something, but not knowing how to begin. Finally, he worked up the courage to lean across the aisle. Excuse me, he said quietly. I owe you an apology, a big one. Maya turned to face him, seeing a very different person than the arrogant man from earlier. His expensive suit couldn't hide the shame written across his face. I was completely wrong, Richard continued. I judged you based on nothing, on clothes and appearances and my own stupid assumptions. I had no right to treat you that way. No, you didn't, Maya agreed, but her tone wasn't harsh. But thank you for acknowledging it. I have a son in college, Richard said, his voice growing emotional. If someone treated him the way I treated you today, I'd be furious. And here you are, someone who served our country, who saved lives. He trailed off, shaking his head. We all make mistakes, Maya said. What matters is what we do after we realize we were wrong. Richard nodded gratefully. Is there anything I can do? Any way I can make this right? Maya thought for a moment. You can remember this feeling the next time you're tempted to judge someone you don't know. I will, Richard promised. I absolutely will. Captain Rodriguez watched this exchange with approval. This was what redemption looked like, not just punishment for wrongdoing, but genuine understanding and change. Ms. Vasquez, the captain said, I'll be filing a full report about today's incident with the airline. They'll want to make this right with you. I don't need compensation, Maya replied. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else. It won't, Captain Rodriguez said firmly. I'll make sure of that. As the flight continued, other passengers found reasons to walk past first class just to get another look at Maya. Some stopped to chat, sharing their own military connections, or simply expressing their gratitude. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, walked up with her mother and handed Maya a drawing she had made on a napkin. I drew you as a superhero, the little girl said shyly. Because that's what you are. The drawing showed a stick figure in a cape, with hero written across the chest. Maya felt tears spring to her eyes as she accepted the precious gift. This is beautiful, she told the child. Thank you so much. Were you really in the Army? The girl asked with wide eyes. Navy. Maya corrected gently. I was a medic. I helped take care of people who got hurt. Like a doctor? Kind of like a doctor, yes. The girl's mother smiled apologetically. Say thank you to Ms. Maya for keeping us safe, honey. Thank you for keeping us safe, the girl repeated solemnly. After they left, Maya stared at the drawing for a long time. She had never thought of herself as a superhero. In her mind, she had just been doing her job, serving her country, helping people who needed help. But seeing herself through this child's eyes made her realize that sometimes being ordinary was actually quite extraordinary. Frank, the elderly veteran who had defended her earlier, made his way up from economy with his wife Helen. I had to come. Thank you properly, Frank said, extending his hand. Vietnam, 1st Infantry Division. I know courage when I see it, and you showed plenty of it today. Thank you for standing up for me, Maya replied, shaking his weathered hand. That meant everything. Had, too, Frank said simply. We take care of our own. Helen gave Maya a gentle hug. I'm sorry for your loss, dear. Your father would be so proud of how you handled yourself today. Those words hit Maya harder than anything else. Her father would have been proud, not just of her military service, but of how she had maintained her dignity in the face of unfair treatment. As the plane began its descent into Boston, Jennifer approached Maya one more time. Ma'am, she said quietly, the airline will want to make this situation right. They'll probably offer you compensation, free flights, that sort of thing. Maya nodded. I appreciate that, but what I really want is for your company to train their staff better. This shouldn't happen to anyone. It won't, Jennifer promised. I can guarantee that this experience will change how we do things. The plane touched down at Logan International Airport right on schedule. As passengers began gathering their belongings, many took one last opportunity to thank Maya or shake her hand. Captain Rodriguez appeared one final time as passengers were preparing to deplane. Ms. Vasquez, he said, it's been an honor flying with you. Your father's funeral is tomorrow? Yes, sir. Tomorrow afternoon. He's going to have quite a story to hear about his daughter's flight, the captain said with a smile. I have a feeling he would have handled that businessman the same way I did, with a firm reminder about respect and dignity. Maya laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had since learning about her father's death. He probably would have been a lot less diplomatic about it. As she walked off the plane, Maya was surprised to find airport personnel waiting for her at the gate. A man in a suit approached with an apologetic expression. Ms. Vasquez? I'm David Chen, the station manager here in Boston. On behalf of the entire airline, I want to apologize for what happened on your flight today. Thank you, Maya said. But Captain Rodriguez already took care of everything. Even so, we'd like to make this right. We're refunding your ticket completely, providing you with a travel voucher for future flights, and we're reviewing our training procedures to ensure this never happens again. Maya accepted the gestures gracefully, knowing they came from a place of genuine regret and a desire to improve. As she made her way through the airport, Maya reflected on the incredible journey of the past few hours. She had boarded the plane, feeling defeated and invisible. She was leaving it feeling seen, valued, and respected. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How was the flight, honey? Maya smiled as she typed back, It had some rough moments, but it ended well. I'll tell you all about it when I get to the hotel. Walking toward baggage claim, Maya thought about her father and the funeral tomorrow. She would tell everyone about Captain Rodriguez, about Frank's courage, about the little girl's drawing, about how sometimes the worst moments can turn into something beautiful. Her father had always told her that respect wasn't given freely. It was earned. Today, she had learned that sometimes people need to be reminded of what you've already earned. And sometimes, when good people see injustice, they have the courage to stand up and make it right. As she stepped outside into the Boston night air, Maya felt something she hadn't felt since her father's death. Hope. Tomorrow would be difficult, saying goodbye to her hero. But she would face it with the knowledge that there were still good people in the world, people who recognized worth and dignity when they saw it. Her father would have been proud of that flight after all.